And I said, this is a great learning environment. If you're always in perfect conditions, when you're throwing a curveball, how do you deal with them if you're only diving in perfect situations? So, like as I started to dive in Travis, I said, okay, visibility can be anywhere from 15 feet to half an inch.
Off Gassing, a scuba podcast with host Nick Hogel. There's a very active diving scene in Central Texas. This is where I first became certified and have lost count of the number of times I've been underwater in Lake Travis, located in Austin, Texas. In this week's episode, I interviewed Dawson. I can easily, without a doubt, say that he is one of the most active members of the diving community in this area. I first met Dawson when I was working at one of the local shops, and he's always been a huge inspiration to me in my diving, constantly seeing him progress and learn as much as possible and never slowing down. I'm excited to share his story, and I hope you enjoy. Dawson, how are you doing on this wonderful Texas evening?
I am doing excellent, Nick.
Nice. And the heat is not bothering you too bad, you were saying?
Yeah, Texas weather is, you take the summers, you take the good with the bad. This year it's been a little bit warmer than most, but, just go from the air-conditioned house to the air-conditioned car to the air-conditioned job to underwater. So.
Yeah. I was gonna say I do recall and miss those Texas summers where it's hot, but then you could always get in the water and cool down a bit. So it made it just a little bit more pleasant, especially when you hit that thermocline. It's just like a breath of, I don't want to say fresh air, but it's like refreshing, I should say.
Yeah, I experienced that Tuesday. I went for a dive. It was about maybe 108. I was in my dry suit. I was like, all right, I gotta go, and had to drop down below 40 to get below the thermocline, and 60 degrees. Then I got a little cold down there. So yeah.
which is more than most people can say, I'm assuming, in Central Texas right now. So, well, yeah, man, I just wanted to bring you onto the podcast, hear your story. So, the first question I always ask is, tell me how and why you got into scuba diving. Tell me about that first experience, that first breath underwater.
So it was kind of a journey even to get to scuba diving. I think my first true experience with the underwater world, I was in the Navy many moons ago, and we had something called Morale, Welfare, and Recreation. And for $25, they gave me a Jeep, they gave me snorkel gear, and free entrance to Hanauma Bay there on Oahu. So I hopped in the Jeep, went over there, didn't know how to snorkel at all. But when I got there, I was over this reef and I was like, wow, this is so cool, So every time I went somewhere after that, I said, I gotta snorkel. And then I was snorkeling in Cozumel maybe almost 10 years later. And then I was diving down, I was at about 25, 30 feet. And then these scuba divers went by, and up until then, I had only thought about scuba from the terms of like Navy divers and SEALs and things like that. And I was like, wow, people are just doing this. And I said, I want to do that, But then life happened, kids, and it wasn't until maybe 4 years ago, my wife and I, we had a trip and we went to Aruba. And I said, well, if I'm going to Aruba, I'm going to get certified. So I kind of arranged with a shop to get certed. I did the e-learning, and when I got down there, they were like, okay, now we're going to do our pool work. I was like, okay, cool. So I'm looking for the pool, and then we walked right out the front door onto the sand, into the water, and I went down, and I was just like, wow, so like my first breath from scuba was there in this kind of bay in Aruba, and from that moment I was hooked on it. So I wanted everything that it had to offer.
That's awesome. So you knew like instantly, because it's a little bit different, I guess, for for different people. Because it's same here. Like I instantly knew as soon as I took that first breath underwater, I'm like, I need more of this. I want more of this. How can I get more of this? And So from there, you did your open water certification in Aruba. Were you living in Texas at that point?
Yep, I was in Texas. So like that first day was tough because I couldn't equalize, so my first day it was a challenge for me, but I had so much fun and my ear was throbbing. I was just like, ah, so but I sorted it out like the next day. I figured out what equalization works for me and then I got certified maybe I think we did that day 1, day 2, day 3 and then I tacked on another day and I was like, okay, now what? So then when I got back to the Austin area, I was just like, okay, how can I keep this up? Because I knew I had a cruise coming up, and I said, okay, I can scuba dive when I go on this cruise to Cozumel. But and I looked at the packages. They said, you can do this type of dive if you're open water, and this type of dive if you're in advance. And I was like, okay, well, what do I need to do to get advanced? And so I called up a shop here and said, hey, I need to do this. And that introduced me to one of the local shops and they took me to Travis. And that was my first dive in Lake Travis. But I was still, I still loved it, even though it's a big difference between Aruba and Lake Travis. But I was like, I know what's out there,
Yeah.
so if I got to practice here, I said, let's do it. From there, I took advance and then I went to Cozumel and did that dive. And like I was on a drift and I was going this way and a turtle was going this way and I was just like, oh wow, this is just amazing, so like after that I got back home and I said I need to know more because I gotta keep doing this. I want to get better. And so yeah, so it just kind of progressed from there and I don't know where my stopping point is yet.
That's no, that's awesome, man. I kind of almost had a similar experience. I didn't get certified, but I did my first dive in Thailand. So it absolutely beautiful. As soon as I went under the water, just mind blown. I remember the whole time I kept thinking about the movie Avatar, just like the colors and all this, just this life down there. And to be honest, I didn't even know that there was a thriving diving scene in the Austin, Texas area. It just kind of happened. Like I was having a drink after work one day, at happy hour, and talking to some, random guy up at the bar, and he's like, "Yeah, there's actually a lot of divers here in the Austin, Texas area." So it opened my eyes to this whole world of Central Texas that I had no idea about. So tell me about that. So the lake diving definitely didn't, because I know for some people it's like as soon as they hit that water, they're like, I don't know about this. I'm good. I'll just wait to do the vacation dives. But you obviously thrived in that environment. So do you want to talk a little bit about the Central Texas diving and what's going on there?
It's a challenge, but I look at I'm a bit of a prepper, so I like to be prepared for different situations, and I think from even at advanced, I say, okay, this is a lot different than being in the ocean, and I said this is a great learning environment. If you're always in perfect conditions, when you're throwing a curveball, how do you deal with them if you're only diving in perfect situations? So, like as I started to dive in Travis, I said, okay, visibility can be anywhere from 15 feet to half an inch, and it's just like, what do you do? So it's like I started to get comfortable in that situation where like I did the advance and I found out about the boat that does some charters around and I said, okay, I can do all of these different things. I said I can learn like night diving. Instead of calling it a night dive, I say, okay, I'll just drop down to 90 feet where it's nighttime here. So and I look at as far as I wanted to learn like search and recovery because I had saw people find things and I was like, okay. I said, how does this thing work? So I started just retrieving boat anchors, and I was like just working a lift bag and I was like, oh wow, this is so cool. This huge anchors, like even in my backyard now, I have these probably $500-600 boat anchors that I don't do anything with because I don't have a boat. But I was just like, but they're so cool. And then it's like we do treasure hunting, because it's a really big recreational lake, right? As you know, and there are party barges everywhere, and then I started to say, oh, okay, the party barges they drop a lot of things. And the slide where they go in, they drop and they're in 60 feet of water right there. So when they drop it, only a diver can get it. And so it's like I have just tons of sunglasses and watches and phones and cash. And I mean, if you name it, I found it in the lake. If you take it on a boat, I probably found that in the lake, somewhere.
No, that's definitely nice. I did enjoy those dives just because, yeah, you can find amazing stuff. Like probably the last, few years that I lived in, well, since I got certified for scuba diving in Texas, I have not paid for a pair of sunglasses.
Yeah,
You could
yeah.
definitely go and find some really nice shades down in the water,
If you
just,
need some Ray-Bans
midsummer.
or Oculus, let me know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have plenty. So, but I mean, I look at the lake, man. It's just a great environment to learn. Where I just look at different situations where I can practice just about any scenario inside the lake. I started doing some cave stuff, but I said, how can I practice that in the lake? There's some places in the lake that get so silty that if you're not finning correctly, when you're treasure hunting, you're going to just kick up a world of silt. So I learned frog kicking before I even went technical because I said I don't want to silt things up in the area, and just being in that limited visibility where, if you got to do like a lost line drill where you can't see, I say, well, I've dove without being able to see. I say it's like going to Devil's Cove, and somebody came by and you're like, okay, I can't see anything, so I just kind of work my way there. So, and then you have just restrictions. You have like the trees, that you have to kind of navigate around. So it's just all kinds of scenarios that you can find to train with inside the lake. So that's one of the things that I really like about it.
No, I do very much miss Lake Travis because I would always tell people, if you can have fun here, anywhere you go, you're going to have an amazing time because of the conditions here. And it is such a great place to train. I didn't take advantage of it as much while I was living there, but for technical training, it is a great lake because you could get deep. There's definitely varying conditions, siltiness, low visibility, kind of like you're saying, restrictions. So it's definitely a really good spot, and I feel like that's kind of why a lot of divers will gravitate to that area. It's kind of just a weird place because it's such a big lake. And then I was gonna ask some questions a little bit further on into the episode, but bring me back to like your progression. So when you went into your rescue and then eventually DM, or even before you became a pro, was that something that you knew you wanted to do, or was it something that just kind of happened? Like, you want to talk about that a little bit?
So I'll say I'm a technical diver first. I became a DM for a reason, and because I had some family members we were going to be going diving, and they said, well, if you're a DM, you don't have to hire a guide. I said, okay, I'll become a DM then. And as far as becoming an instructor, I became an instructor because my youngest son said he was resistant to diving. And then one day he came up to me and said, hey, Dad, I want to get certified. I said, okay, I can find somebody that can certify you. He said, well, I want you to train me. And I said, well, okay, I have to become an instructor for that. So I became an instructor basically because he wanted me to train him. But I look at first, I'm a technical diver because that skill set is a lot different. There are different type of skill sets between technical and dive professionals. And I really gravitate towards the technical aspect of things versus the professional aspects of things.
Okay, so you were traveling down the technical path before you became a dive pro. Do you want to talk a little bit about that progression?
Yeah. So for that one, and this things is just kind of evolved because, like I said, I was already hooked on diving. I was diving there in the lake, and I had met a great group of people that dove on Wednesday night. They call it the Wednesday Aquatic Club, So I dove with them all the time, and I would always be asking for buddies, say, "Hey, you want to go dive? You want to go dive?" But I noticed that I wanted to dive a lot more than other people wanted to dive. So I was like, okay, so how do I kind of dive, towards the independent route? So that's when I was introduced to independent diver or solo diver, and I took that course and I learned about doing redundancy, and I had already gotten rescue because I am a bit of a prepper, but went down that route and I started slinging a pony, and I said, okay, this is pretty cool. Now I have redundancy, but man, what's that thing, that side mount thing and that doubles, I said, that looks even better. And then I was also I'm former Navy as well, and I found out about there's an aircraft carrier off the coast of Pensacola, the Oriskany, and I read up about it. I was like, I want to go see that aircraft carrier, and I found out that the screws were at about 215, and I said, okay, what do I have to do to see that? And I found a great tech instructor that kind of fits my personality, and it was just kind of a progression where I kind of went through the different levels, that kind of intro phase, working my way up to 45, 50, 65, and now I don't really know if I have a limit now. So, but I was able to get the Oriskany this past May. Well, hold on. Each time I completed a level, I would go to the Oriskany and go deeper and deeper. Like the first
Okay.
time when I did my intro, I couldn't really get to the flight deck because you're still limited on that 130. So I was like, but if you're at the Oriskany, the flight deck is on the starboard side of the ship. It's at 145. The port side is at 135. I didn't know that until my second dive, but I dropped down to 130 and I just hovered right there above the flight deck and I could just see it 15 feet away. I was like, this is so cool. Because I could do non-accelerated deco. So I said, okay, I'm going to keep training. And then when I finished my Tech 45. Then I went down to the flight deck, and then I did some more training. I think Tech 50 and 65, and then I went into the hangar bay. And when I finally did my hypoxic training, then I was able to just take it all the way to the screws, no problem. So I progressed each time, and even now, that's still the place that I love. And I say, okay, next thing I want to learn technical rec, because I want to start doing penetrations inside the carrier. So that's kind of been my inspiration for tech. But I've done it now in several different places, and want to get to truck for that. There's more training to do, but all of those things fascinate, and that's really more naval history. So I can see that. So that's been a lot of the inspiration around technical diving. By accident, not really accident, my tech instructor, he was taking a group of folks to the caves and he said, hey, you want a cave dive? And I was like, I never really, so I'm like, no, I don't really have an interest in that. Uh, I mean, because it wasn't no, I'm never doing that. But it was like, I mean, it's just rocks in there. I mean, why see that? But then he said, well, just do this because it's the skills that you'll get from it. And I was like, okay. So we go and we do a cave, and the first time we go into the cave, I get in there and I'm just like, wow, this is so cool. I mean, I was just like, this is amazing. Turn off your lights, turn off your lights. So I was just like, it's like learning about diving all over again, where I never thought I'd be that excited about being in a dark hole, where you can't see anything.
So I still have yet to complete any cave training, but it is a goal of mine, and it's literally the same thing. Because being from Texas, and even from a lot of parts of the world, you hear about the cenotes in Mexico quite a bit, and even the caves in
Hmm.
Florida. Like, you hear about it quite a bit, especially when you start diving, because a
Hmm.
lot of people can go down to Mexico, open water certified. They can go do a cavern tour, and I was like, yeah, I don't have any
Yeah.
interest in it, and literally went down there just to, I was doing some diving in Cozumel, and then we went over to Tulum, and I was like, yeah, I'll try it just to see what it's all about. Like, I don't think I'm going to be
Hmm.
hooked into it or anything. And yeah, as soon as you enter that cavern zone, you're just like mind blown. You're like, this is a whole nother world, and it's not what I expected. And then plus the skill
Hmm.
set that it takes to get into those type of environments is really appealing too, especially when you start progressing as a diver. So that's no, that's that's awesome. It's funny, it just kind of happened by accident. So,
Hmm.
um,
It just happens.
so what is your go to configuration? Because I know I don't want to say there's an argument. I know some people are lean more towards the back mount double. Some people lean more towards side mount. Do you have a go to? Do you have a favorite?
So when I first started doing tech, I did it in side mount because side mount, it just looks cool. And I love side mount. I am so comfortable in it, and it just feels natural to me. It's just, I kind of described it to someone when I'm in my back plate and wing, I'm like a fighter pilot almost. But when I put on my side mount, it's like I'm just like a pontoon or a bomber. It's just like I'm just so steady, and it's just great. But one of the things that I did recently, maybe this time last year, I started diving doubles. because I had dove side mount, and I'll still dive side mount off a boat. But the wing that I have couldn't give me enough lift for the amount of tanks that I needed to do on a dive. So I said, okay, I'm going to switch to doubles. And now I've started to really appreciate doubles, especially how easy it is to just get off a boat, or like if I'm at Windy Point, walking up and down the stairs instead of me having to kind of do one of these and side mount or take tanks up and down, because it's one of the blessings of side mount is that you can stage your tanks or get them into the water, which makes it convenient. But like at Windy, that means you have to haul them all the way down the ladder and haul them all the way back up. So I was just like, I'd rather just have two on my back and walk down the stairs. So it really depends on what I'm doing, on what my favorite is at the time, And now I'm kind of comfortable in both of those configurations. And sometimes, I mean, when I'm traveling, now I'll just say, okay, I only want to take one wing. My single take wing is big enough where I can have an 80 on the back, and I can sling an 80. So it supports that. So I said, okay. So I just put me in a situation, and that'll be my favorite.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's the what a lot of people keep referring back to. It's all about the right tool for the job.
Hmm.
I definitely need to up my game on doubles because I kind of fell down the side mount route just because same thing that when I went to the caverns in Mexico, just saw some side mount divers. I was like, man, that looks so cool to me. I want to try it. And slowly progressing through my limited, I very limited technical training, but I did an intro to tech, and I ended up doing it in doubles because I wanted to try multiple configurations. And but as soon as I
Hmm.
kind of, it was like a toss up because I was learning doubles and side mount at the same time, and side mount's definitely more tedious. There's a lot more to it, but when you get in the water.
I'd say if you're going down the technical route, you got to pick your configuration and do your training. Then once your training is done, go to a different configuration. Yeah, because it's tough to go back and forth.
Currently, I'm pushing for side mount, and because I definitely have a lot more dives in side mount. But I actually just reached out to an instructor to take a fundamentals course. And if a lot of people know about, or if you're, for people that don't know about fundamentals,
Are you going the
it's
GUE route?
well, just I. That's a class that I've wanted to take for a long time. I think it would be a great class just for the skill set. I don't necessarily think I'll end up, going down that route, but it's almost kind of like a not a personal thing, just kind of like, okay, let's see where I stand. I have very limited dives in back mount doubles. I do see the advantages in certain situations. Like you were saying, diving off of a boat, a lot easier, I'm sure, than side mount. You're jumping in, getting your tanks handed to you. Well, that's how I was doing it. I know some people will clip them on, then jump in, so it's all different. But I just wanted to just kind of see where I'm at, just to try it out.
Hmm.
So I think this October I was gonna be. I've been speaking to the instructor, and then this October I'm gonna go and just kind of see, what's going on with that world. But I mean, I'm a just a fan of training, not necessarily agency. So at this point, like I have my PADI certs, some SSI certs. TDI. I don't know if I have an actual SDI cert. I might. I just completed a RAID certification. I did a advanced wreck diving in the Philippines, and absolutely
Hmm.
amazing. Same thing. Like I never thought I'd want to see myself inside of a wreck, but I kind of knew I wanted to go the overhead environment. And there is some caves up in Thailand, and I know there's a lot of exploration going on this side of the world, but there's a lot of wrecks. So I was like, okay, this would be a great
Hmm.
way to get into some overhead training. And yeah, it was intense, man. Like I was in Subic Bay in the Philippines, and there's some really cool wrecks there. And the final day of diving, we were at the U.S. I think it's the USS New York, and it's not super deep. I think it tops out at about 30 meters. That's about 100 or so feet. And
Hmm.
we were getting in there, and then we were doing some penetration, and we get into we're running lines, and we get into the engine room, and it's just crazy because everything just starts closing in on you, and there's points that you get in
Hmm.
there where you cannot turn around. Like, there's no turning around at this point. You
Mm.
have to keep going further in order to turn around to come back out.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, it like the awareness that you have, just the mindset when you're in there is so mind blowing. It's just like, wow, I'm here right now. Like, there's nothing you can do to really. I don't know. It's pretty wild, and so that's kind of my goal right now, is to practice in some overhead environments. I do have a goal to make it back out to Mexico to do some start my cavern and intro to cave, just see where it goes. But
Hmm.
while I'm out here now, just kind of take advantages of what's out here. So the technical side of it, do you think that you'll end up going towards a rebreather, or what are you thinking on that note?
So the cost of helium is definitely kind of gauging that, because I was looking at, for the places that I want to go, there are some deeper dives that are required, and they can be very costly helium wise. And then now that doesn't mean that a rebreather is cheap, but I would do enough of those deeper dives, I could easily justify paying for a rebreather. I think just for my training for hypoxic, I think my gas for that week was like $2,000. So I'm like, okay, that would have been a good start to saving up for a
Yeah.
rebreather. So
Yeah.
so like I'm looking at if I'm looking at doing truck, I said, okay, I would love to do it more than once, but if I can only do it once, how do I maximize my time and how do I maximize my cost on that? I said I can do it open circuit, but it'd be very costly, and I'd limit my time on how long I could be on some of those wrecks, or I could get trained on a rebreather, extend that time, and also not have the same amount of gas requirements. And I can also use that same one when I'm diving the Oriskany. So I am looking at, there's two that I'm considering right now, and I hope to start training by the end of this year on it, and then kind of give myself a full year of just tons of lake dives, and then maybe the year after that trying to do truck.
Okay. If you don't mind me asking, which units are you looking at?
So I'm still very much so because I can't make up my mind between doubles and side mount. Currently, I'm looking at between the Scuba Force SF2 or the Choptima,
Oh, okay.
and both of those you can do doubles or side mount with the right conversion kits. So, and that's where I say, okay, it gives me options. Where if I'm diving doubles, like if I'm in a wreck, where doubles really come off or work well in a wreck, I said I can dive either the Scuba Force or the Choptima, and now it's just a matter of trying to really nail down which one.
Okay. Are there local instructors?
For one of them, yes, there's some local training. For the Choptima, I don't know anyone locally that I would get that training with, that I would feel comfortable getting that training with. So it's just a matter of trying to decide which one I want to get. The thing I learned about rebreathers also is that if you talk to someone with a rebreather, the one that they have is the best one ever. So, so it's just like, because no one wants to say I made a $10,000 mistake, So,
I that's funny, man. No, I am very much in the same boat, because I just recently took my first technical class, I should say. I did the intro to tech, but and I guess that could be an argument on what's a technical class or what's not. But I did advanced nitrox decompression procedures. So we were able to go down to, I believe it was 40. Yeah, 40 meters
mhm.
with 10 minutes of deco. And talking to my instructor, because this was out in Indonesia, and the price of helium is just outrageous. Not even in Indonesia, just all over the world, it's skyrocketing. So I'm like, hey, just kind of me being up to date on things. I was like, so obviously the next step in this progression would be to take this course, but what open circuit mixed gas diving is it's actually a question I keep popping up to a lot of people, just because it's like, what route do you think it's going with the costs? Like you were saying, the gas costs that you acquired during your dive that you were doing, that's a good chunk towards a rebreather. And if you end up start going down that route, it's like, well, why not look at a rebreather? So I started just doing my research, different units, and I've like I was saying, I'm definitely I've leaned towards side mount, but now I'm kind of like opening up my mind on like, okay, maybe I should go this route, the right tool for the job. So I was looking at side mount rebreathers, and I know there's a lot of
Hmm.
talk and a lot of people suggest like you shouldn't start on a side mount rebreather. I think there definitely is like an not an, it just kind of depends on who you speak to, um, but like you were saying, anybody you speak to, whatever rebreather they're diving on, that's the unit that you should go and try, especially if they're an instructor. They might be trying to sell a unit or whatnot. And so I'm
Hmm.
looking at side mount rebreathers, and then I'm like, okay, well, maybe I need to just look at a back mount unit. But at the same time, they are very expensive, so I don't see myself buying one unit and then turning around and buying another unit a few years later. It's like, okay, whatever unit I'm going with, I need to kind of stick it out with for a long time, cost wise, and then just training wise. So a couple of them have appealed to me, but there's still a lot more research to do. But right now, for a back mount unit, and I know there's arguments out there, but for a back mount unit, I was looking at the Revo, just because I have an instructor
Hmm.
who I trust and feel comfortable with, who teaches on a Revo. He teaches on multiple different units. I think he was actually able to teach me on the Choptima. But I like the Revo because you can find them at a pretty decent price. So I was like, okay, like used
Hmm.
ones for a pretty decent price. So I'm like, okay, like maybe that's the route I could go. I could dive it for a few years, and then if I wanted to go the side mount route, look into that, sell the unit, try to get some money towards another unit. But yeah, it's definitely. I feel like the further you progress, the more the wallet keeps coming out. So it's like,
Hmm.
okay, it's
Yeah.
because you don't want to cheap out on training, and good education, good training is not going to be cheap. So it's
Hmm.
definitely. Yeah, it's a fun path. So I'll definitely have to keep in touch with you more to kind of see like how you're progressing and how you're liking what you're doing.
I definitely like having gone all the way down the open circuit path because I look at if I'm in a pinch, because some people, well, because there's no knocks either way that you go, but I met some people that'll kind of do their intro to tech and then they'll instantly go rebreather, and I think that's a perfectly fine way to go. But I notice how there's a difference between how I'll dive to a certain depth on open circuit versus someone on a rebreather. And I want that training of open circuit because if I have an issue on my rebreather, I'm bailing out the open circuit and I know exactly what to do no matter where I am at any point of the dive. And I can still plan my dives that way, where it's basically it's another layer of redundancy to me almost, where I like having that open circuit training before I jumped into the rebreather. But maybe if I had 10 grand laying around, I probably would have did it different. But I definitely like having the open circuit training that I have.
No, and to be honest, that's actually a goal of mine, is to get some more just decompression dives in, get more comfortable, switching gases underneath. And I've even thought about it, doing the next step into mixed gas diving, but it's just kind of, yeah, I'm still kind of
The,
like we were saying, depending on who you talk to, it just depends on like what route you're gonna go. So
mm-hmm,
yeah, it's definitely something I'll have to figure out, and I'll definitely keep you updated as I'm kind of progressing
mm-hmm,
through my personal journey.
mm-hmm,
But my next question I wanted to ask you, so I actually had to look this up because I wasn't sure, which is funny because I've known you for quite a long time, and I didn't really know. I was just like, I didn't really know, but hopefully I'm pronouncing it right. Go Scuba. Is that how you pronounce it? Go Scuba?
Go scuba.
Okay,
Yeah, go
okay.
scuba.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
tell me about that. Like, how did that all come? So I just had to look up because I'm like, how do you pronounce it? And it's so simple, but like, I was just really complicating it. I'm like, GUX. Like, what does it say? So like, tell me a little bit about how that all came about.
I'm originally from Louisiana, so we have Go Tigers, Go Saints. Before scuba, I ran a lot, and I said, okay, I had a thing, go run, so I'm always running. So when I started to scuba, I said, okay, I created an Instagram profile and said, okay, go scuba, but go is basically the French word for go, so I just go scuba. So it's kind of like that's my addiction. What's the problem? I got a solution for you. Go scuba. So that's the solution to your problem. Just go scuba. So, so yeah, it fits in every scenario.
Have you done any? I don't know if there is any diving in Louisiana.
I haven't dove in Louisiana, so the diving that I have heard about is they'll go offshore and they'll dive some of the platforms.
Oh, okay.
Now there are some public safety divers. They'll go into some of the bayous and swamps and things like that. I'm like, I don't know if I really want to go diving in a swamp. I mean, you got gators and snakes, and I'm just like, you can't see it. I'm like, yeah. And even the people that I met from Louisiana that dive, they'll come to Texas to dive, or either I'll come across them in like Pensacola or something. But the oil rigs are great though. I mean, diving on an oil platform, I mean, that's great diving, and you can do that offshore of Louisiana.
All right, man. Well, dude, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I'll just have last couple questions for you, and then I'll let you go enjoy
Hmm.
your Texas evening. So it kind of always is the same question, but if you could speak to yourself as you first started getting into scuba, you're sitting yourself down. Is there any advice would you have for that person? And generally, it's usually the same as what advice would you have for newer divers? You being an instructor, I mean, you've probably seen problems, you've witnessed a lot of stuff. What is a good piece of advice that you could give to somebody that just got into scuba or is thinking about getting into scuba? What would be a good piece of advice you'd like to give?
The strong advice that I give to new divers, or I would give to myself because it was a hard lesson to learn, is I really subscribe to the model of buy once, cry once. So, so when I first started out, I was just like trying to figure out what's the cheapest stuff that I could get. I think I spent a little bit more for my regulator, but everything else was $15 torch from Amazon, or I bought like a computer that was like $100 or $75, and then I'd end up buying it in a duration. So now I'm just like, figure out what you want, get that, just save up for it and buy once, cry once, or something that will last you a really long time and it can grow with you. Like I look at computers, like computers are a big one where I say you can get a really nice computer that you can grow with for $500. But if you get the $100 computer, you might be buying another one. If you like diving, you'll probably be buying another one pretty soon. You know, so so it's just like just go ahead and spend at least $400 or $500 for that. But it's that buy once, cry once is the advice that I give, and the other piece of advice is the best training you can do is to go dive. The experience is more valuable to me than the training most of the time. Where even if I'm going for some of my technical training, I'll prepare for it by training before the class so much that the class is easy, where
Yeah.
now I'm just picking up the skills that they want me to learn. But the experience that you get from just going to dive, that's actually how you get better. You can't get better without diving. You know, just the class alone won't do it. But you can dive a lot, and try to have the right fundamentals. You'll definitely get a lot better.
Awesome. Great advice. And the last question I have for you is, and I know you kind of spoke a little bit about it through the podcast today, but what is any cool trips planned for Go Scuba, or anything cool in the future for Go Scuba?
Always looking to go places. I think the next trip where I'll be traveling, I assist with a group that I belong with called the National Association of Black Scuba Divers. And we will be having a safety training next month. And I'll be participating in that, and that'll be a lot of fun. I did it last year. I learned so many different things on rescue procedures that you don't always get to practice, and that'll be a great time. So I'll be doing that in a couple weeks.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So I wish you the very best, man, and I look forward to see what you got going on, and definitely will be in touch. And I should be back in Texas at some point, probably towards the end of the year. But yeah, it would be great to meet up. I don't know if I'll be ready to because I think I'm planning December, so I don't know if I'll be ready to jump in the lake. But who knows? I mean, I know the last December I was there, it was still pretty warm.
We got Spring Lake.
Yeah.
We got Spring Lake.
That's true.
So
That's
72
true.
degrees year round. And the one thing I do want to just mention while we're on here is that I do want to thank you because you trained my oldest son. You were my oldest son's open water instructor. So yeah, so shout out to you, Nick.
Hey, thank you, man. Thank you. No, you've been it's actually been very motivational and inspiring to kind of see you progress, because I remember when I was first working in the shop, I don't know if you remember that, but I don't know what level you were at that point, but I would just see you in there every day, just like what's, kind of like that mentality, what's next, what's going on. And then I would like to see you progress from when I first met you to where you are now has been absolutely amazing and inspiring. So it's definitely, so thank you for that, because divers like you give me the push that I need to kind of not become complacent. Like, oh man, this guy's doing really cool stuff, I should be seeing what's next too. Because sometimes I'll kind of fall into a rut. So no, it's a absolute pleasure to know you, man, because it's great to see your journey. So
it's all about the journey. Enjoy the journey, man.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Thank you very much for coming on to the show.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Nick.
Off Gassing, a scuba podcast.